Tonight's case begins with something many of us have experienced at some point in our own lives: adventure. A young woman seeking a new start on the other side of the country in California. Lauren Cho, 30 years old, made new friends, got a new job, and then Lauren vanished. And months later, nothing.
On June 26, 2021, a young woman sent a text message to her ex-boyfriend and told him she was going to walk into the desert alone. He tried to call her back. She did not answer. That was the last communication anyone received from Lauren Cho. She was 30 years old. She was in the California desert, and for the next 72 days, the world mostly moved on without her. Lauren Cho grew up in New Jersey, the daughter of Korean immigrant parents who had built a life in America the slow and careful way: work, family, community, stability. Lauren was the kind of person who moved between worlds comfortably. She was funny. Her friends described her as warm, generous, someone who lit up a room without trying. She had worked as a waitress and a bartender in New York City. She loved music, loved food, loved the kind of conversations that went too late into the night. She was, by every account, someone who made the people around her feel seen.
But in the years leading up to 2021, Lauren had been going through something privately. The details were not shared publicly, and her family kept them close, as families do. What is known is that she had been struggling with her mental health, that she had gone through a difficult breakup, and that sometime in 2021 she ended up in Yucca Valley, California, a small desert town on the eastern edge of Los Angeles County, about 20 miles north of Joshua Tree National Park. Yucca Valley sits at the edge of the Mojave Desert. It is the kind of place that draws people who are looking for something: quiet, space, distance from whatever they left behind. Artists and hikers and people who need the particular silence that only a desert can offer. Lauren was staying with a friend there. She was not a tourist passing through. She was trying to find some kind of footing. On the afternoon of June 26, 2021, something shifted. She sent the text to her ex-boyfriend. She told him she was going to walk into the desert. He called her back immediately. She did not pick up. He called again. No answer. He reached out to the people she was staying with, and by the time anyone in Yucca Valley went to look for Lauren Cho, she was already gone.
The San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department took the missing persons report. Deputies responded. They searched the immediate area around the property where she had been staying. They did not find her. And here is where the story starts to become something more than a missing persons case. Because what happened next, or more precisely, what did not happen next, became the subject of a national conversation that Lauren herself never got to be part of. The search for Lauren Cho was, by any honest measure, small. There was no major organized ground search in the days that followed. There was no press conference. There was no Amber Alert, no helicopter grid search, no cable news coverage. A 30-year-old woman had walked into one of the most remote and unforgiving landscapes in California, in summer, in June heat, and the official response was limited. Her family began making noise. Her friends launched a social media campaign. A GoFundMe was created to fund an independent search. Volunteers and community members came to Yucca Valley and searched on foot in the desert heat, because the resources they felt the case deserved had not materialized. And as the days passed, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, the contrast became impossible to ignore.
In August 2021, a young white woman named Gabrielle Petito went missing in Wyoming. Within days of her disappearance being reported, her case was everywhere. National news, FBI involvement, dedicated press briefings, hundreds of thousands of social media posts. Her face was on every platform simultaneously. By the time her body was found, Her case had generated more media coverage than most major crimes of that year. Lauren Cho had been missing for weeks by then. Most people had never heard her name. Activists and journalists began asking the question directly. Why do some missing persons cases receive the full weight of national attention, while others disappear into silence? Why is the standard applied so unevenly? Why does the face of a missing person seem to affect how urgently the world responds? The term missing white woman syndrome, a phrase that had existed in academic and media criticism circles for years, entered mainstream conversation in a way it never had before. And Lauren Cho became, through no choice of her own, the face of that conversation. Her family never wanted her to be a symbol. They wanted her found.
The search continued. Volunteers kept going back. The terrain around Yucca Valley is not easy. Scrubland, boulder fields, Joshua trees, ravines, and summer temperatures that routinely climb past 110 degrees. The desert does not give things back easily. Search teams covered ground methodically. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into a month. The GoFundMe kept funding volunteers. Lauren's face kept circulating. On September 6th, 2021, 72 days after Lauren Cho walked away from the property in Yucca Valley, her remains were found. She had not gone far. She was less than 1 mile from the place where she was last seen. She had been there, somewhere in that terrain, the entire time. The cause of death was determined to be exposure. She was 30 years old. The San Bernardino County coroner ruled her death an accident. She had walked into the desert, and she had not come back out. The investigation did not find evidence of foul play. There was no crime scene in the traditional sense. There was just a young woman who had walked into the heat and the silence, and had not been found in time.
But for many people, her family, her friends, the community that had mobilized to find her, the questions did not end with that ruling. They shifted. How different might the outcome have been if the resources had come sooner? If the national coverage had arrived in week 1 instead of not at all? If the infrastructure that deploys for some missing persons cases had deployed for Lauren? If the 72 days had been 72 hours? Nobody can answer that with certainty. The desert is unforgiving regardless of who is looking. But the question sits there. It does not go away. Lauren's family has spoken carefully in the time since. Her parents, who immigrated to America and built their lives here, had to watch their daughter become a talking point in a media debate about whose lives receive urgency and whose do not, while simultaneously grieving her privately. Her mother, her father, her siblings, they did not ask to be in this story. They asked for their daughter to be found. By the time the world started paying attention, they were already running out of time. There is a specific cruelty to that sequence. The attention came, just not when it could have mattered.
After her death, organizations working on missing persons equity reform used Lauren's case in policy discussions about how police departments allocate search resources, how media outlets make decisions about coverage, and how systemic biases shape who receives urgent public attention and who does not. Her name became part of a longer, harder conversation that America has been reluctant to have directly. Lauren Cho was a daughter, a sister, a friend. She was someone who, on the worst day of her life, sent one last message and walked into a landscape that held her until it was too late.
She deserved a search that matched her worth. She was worth everything. And 72 days is a very long time to be alone in the desert, while the world looks the other way.